Today we're going to talk about cars that I've owned and built over the years. And this is going to start with some fairly obscure cars. Some of you may actually remember the Geo nameplate from the 90s, which was GM's attempt to help foreign car manufacturers get started in our country. I think that was a huge mistake for them. Anyway, I had a Geo Storm, a white car. It's just a little easy on gas commuter car that I turbocharged and intercooled. Front wheel drive, pretty fun car. The Geostorm is actually based on the Isuzu Paniro. The sister car to that would be the Isuzu Impulse, which is the red car with the blue bumper. There were actually only ever 800 of these cars imported into the United States. Not only is that where I got the turbocharger and intercooler from for my Geostorm, but it also had an all-wheel drive system, and the suspension was tuned by Lotus. Lotus also used the engine and transmission bits, I think, in their Lotus Elise, which is how this Japanese car got Lotus suspension. I was doing turbocharged, intercooled, all-wheel drive cars before Subaru was really into that and doing that. These cars were a lot of fun, pretty hard to find parts for, as they were kind of old at the time, and there just weren't that many of them in our country. Pretty fun though, and then because of all that, I ended up getting the next car, I think 2001 Subaru Impreza 2.5 RS. An Asian guy owned it before me. I think he bought it new. He did all the Japanese look-alike parts on it, so my 2.5 RS basically looked like a Japanese Subaru Impreza STI, including the steering wheel and the seats and everything inside. It had the wing on the back and the gold wheels and functional hood scoops and all that stuff. I actually totaled that car. I hit a F350 head on, and I did not drive for 2 or 3 years after that. It was quite traumatizing. I got quite hurt. But by the time I decided I wanted to drive again, I didn't really have a lot of money, and I was still into cars, so I bought this 67 Beetle. The engine had caught fire, so we went and towed it home with the family pickup truck and a borrowed trailer or car dolly or something like that, and we put the engine in the back of the truck. Within a couple weeks or something, I'd taken the engine apart and fixed it and put it back together and got the car running. It was already lowered and had the roof rack and stuff on it. I really liked it. It was a 67, so it had the bigger engine in it, but it still looked like the older cars with the towel holder bumpers, had lowering spindles. It was a pretty fun car, and I didn't really like the way it handled with the, torsion beam rear end or whatever it was. It was kind of scary around corners. I did end up building from scratch a 1776 engine with dual carburetors and put that in it. And once I did that, I was now gapping Honda Civics in a 67 Volkswagen Beetle, which was a lot of fun. At the time, I was working at a car parts store, and one of the young guys, I was pretty young too, but he was even younger than me, would come in, and he had a Super Beetle, and I was really into that because it handled better. So I ended up taking the 1776 engine out of my 67 Beetle and trading him straight across bodies. So I got his 73 Super Beetle, and he got my 67 Beetle. And I put the engine and everything into the Super Beetle. I bought lowering spring suspension kit, sway bar stuff for it. I got a reproduction German style front spoiler for it, and I had a Herod helper rear spoiler and some exhaust and stuff like that. I think at one time I had the roof rack on it, although I don't have any pictures of the Super Beetle with the roof rack on it. But that was a pretty fun car. It handled a lot better than the 67 Beetle did because it had independent front suspension with a sway bar and coil springs over shocks, which is a pretty modern design. And then about that time, I met my now wife in college, and she didn't have a car, and we were dating, and so I helped her save money, and we got this, I think it was a 90 or 91 Volkswagen Golf Gti, which was pretty fun. I didn't really know at the time that the color was apparently very rare. The Montana green or whatever they call it is a pretty rare color. I didn't care. Her favorite color is green, which is why I got it for her. And she paid for it, and I did some upgrades with the lights and wheels and stuff. And on her car, mostly her cars are family haulers, so there isn't a lot of performance parts on them. We just drove around in them. So typically my wife's cars get wheels and light upgrades, and she just drives around in them. and the GTI was pretty fun. She was quite a terror in it around town, as the 0 to 60 time was 8 seconds, which is enough to be fun and a little bit scary. Forget what happened. I think I was having trouble getting it to pass smog because the fuel injection system was older and nobody really knew how to work on them around here. So we sold it and got her a Mazda Miata for our family car, which only seats 2. So again, didn't really do too much to the engine. The exhaust manifold had a crack in it or something like that, so I replaced it with a header and got her some cool wheels for it. And then it had a black rag top when we got it, and the back window was falling out of it. So instead of getting another rag top for it, I found a silver hardtop. And at the time I was working at a body shop, so we went in one weekend and had it painted black and put on the car. That turned out pretty good. And around that time, I think I got tired of driving the Beetle all the time and having to work on it because carburetors and distributors. I had distributorless ignition in it, actually. It was quite an interesting car. And so there was this old 96 BMW 318 Ti, which is their little 4-cylinder car that's a hatchback, and it's been at the shop for a long time, and people had been robbing parts off of it for other cars and things. So I had to buy like bumpers and find a set of wheels for it and that sort of thing. I think it was even missing the seats, new lights because they were bad, and trim and all that stuff that was missing, and put it together. It turned out to be a nice little car. It was in a pretty bad accident, and the left quarter panel had been like welded and seam sealed back on, and the repair was starting to show. So before it got too bad, well, actually, no, I kept that car for a while, but then what ended up happening was my wife saw how nice of a car it was, and so she wanted a BMW. So then I ended up getting her a 94 325i sedan, and again, I just did like wheels on it and tune-up stuff, and she just drove it around. It did have a 5-speed in it. Actually, to be clear, I don't think any of these cars had automatics. I only had manual transmission cars because I could change the manual transmission if something went bad in it, and the clutch was easy to change. So our family car went from a Mazda Miata and or my BMW, I guess at the time, because we had a kid. I have a stepdaughter. So at that time, I guess we were using my BMW as the family car. But my daughter was quite small and had a car seat and stuff, and that's hard to do in a 2-door car, which the hatchback was. And her sedan, of course, it's a sedan. It had 4 doors, which my wife preferred because it's easier to get the kid in and out of the back, and she can just throw her purse in the back. So she really liked that. And then somehow I found this red 318 Ti, which the guy had wrecked, and we did a full M3 swap on it. I think it was the early E36 M3, the 3-liter, and it had these horrible 19 or 20 inch wheels on it. It was just terrible, and the fender was all smashed up, so I had to repair quite a bit of the suspension and the front left fender. You can kind of see the damage still on the front left bumper. Got all the lights and roof rack and stuff that was on my black car. I didn't need 2 cars at the time. So since the bodywork was starting to show on the black car, I sold it to a friend's kid. I started commuting to work in an M3 swapped hatchback BMW, which was pretty cool. I did do some high-performance driver's education courses in it and some racing at the local autocross and road racing track. And what ended up happening was there's a chicane at the bottom of the track, and these cars make a hero look like a zero because they have E30 BMW rear suspension. They're very difficult to handle fast around corners, and I spun out and almost hit the wall, and I had a family at the time, so I ended up selling my 318 Ti M3 race car thing and bought a Volkswagen Vanagon camper. It was in kind of rough shape when we got it. I ended up putting a new tint on the roof and replacing the slider door, which had a big dent in it. It got a lift and Mercedes-Benz wheels, and of course a spoiler and roof rack and all that crap, lights. And at some point at around 200,000 miles, the water boxer decided to take a crap. And so I ended up, there's a picture in here of the van actually towing the donor car. It was a perfectly nice running 1.8T Jetta GLS. It was a really nice car. I actually drove it home. I bought it and drove it around for a while. I pulled the engine and everything out of that and converted the van to a 1.8T engine. which was smog legal. At some point I ended up selling it because California is full of communists and it just gets harder and harder every year. Even though I have a bar sticker in the engine bay and it's completely smog legal, nobody wanted to do the smog tests on it. So after about owning that for 10 years, I did finally sell it. That's probably the only car that I've owned that long. Other cars only last a few to 5 years maybe, and I sell them. I kind of go through cars. And because we were commuting at the time and Obama was in office, gas prices like now with Obama 2.0 being our president, gas was $6-7 a gallon or whatever. So we ended up selling the BMWs we sold my wife's sedan BMW and I got her a Jetta, which was a TDI. And of course it got rims and a roof rack and a tow bar and all that. We would tow our jet skis with it. That thing got like 35 miles per gallon around town with the AC on and her foot on the floor. So that was a pretty cool deal. And then what ended up happening was it was so expensive to drive. I think at that time I was driving her car or something and it was just too expensive on gas. So I wanted another TDI so that I could commute to work in. Didn't want to pay the premium for a Jetta or a Golf. So I ended up getting this Marvin the Martian green new Beetle, which was pretty cool. Oh, and to be clear here, the TDIs both got programming and intercoolers and bigger injectors and suspension upgrades and all that. I did it to both of them because they were so horribly slow. I mean, they were like Mazda Miata slow. So once I did the injectors and the tune and some suspension bits and wheels, they were much more fun to drive, especially stoplight to stoplight. They didn't really have a lot of go on the freeway, but around town, it was like having a fire-breathing V8 under the hood because they made so much torque off the line. And then because I was into the TDI thing, I ended up getting this like 1980 square headlight Rabbit pickup truck. It had a blown up engine in it, so I somehow managed to get a 1.9 liter TDI engine without a turbocharger and put in it, and it was horribly slow. But it was still fun to drive because it was kind of like driving an old Beetle or something. They're very small. And I did an axle flip kit and lowering struts in the front and stuff. And then it was sort of impractical as a truck and a car. It didn't have AC or anything. It just had a heater and manual power steering. So I ended up selling it to a kid that was going to mechanic school for diesels. He was super stoked about it. Did have a couple rust holes on it. But it was a fun little truck. But, it just sat around. I didn't need it, and I don't have a big garage to put it in. So if I have cars that just sit around, I end up selling them because they just sit there and get ruined. And then about that time, because I was working at a BMW and Mini shop, I ended up buying one of the customers' Mini Coopers that ate a valve, and I did a valve job on it and put some rims on it. And my wife drove it around for a little while, and we had to sell it because too many tickets. Something about the Mini Cooper, it seems like it's going really slow when you're actually doing 90, and I know they're fairly unreliable, and I don't really like working on a front-wheel drive car like that, so we ended up selling it. I probably made some money on that one. And then my wife needed a new family car, and we're into camping and off-roading because of the Volkswagen, so we got a Jeep Cherokee, which has big tires, and I put 2 engines in it, and I'm currently building another engine in it for it that should make about 300 horsepower, so that should be fun when it's done. It's not done right now. Somewhere in here, I also had an Astro van for work, and I had a GMC Canyon pickup truck, which I still have for work. We have a 4-wheel drive, big block, turbocharged Detroit diesel Suburban with a lift kit and like 35s and stuff, but I don't have any pictures of it. And then because we had sold the van and we still wanted to camp, but my wife and I wanted something bigger, I ended up going and getting this. Well, I was looking for step vans because it's like American made, American power, and aluminum bodies, so no rust. Not that there's rust here, but after having that Rabbit pickup with rust, I was kind of over it. But I was actually looking for an older step van with a small block Chevy in it and probably a turbo 400 transmission or something like that. And I found semi-close to us a guy that would buy these old mail trucks at auction and then resell them. And this one didn't run because it has a 24-valve Cummins engine in it, and it needed an injection pump. We went and towed it home. So basically I got a diesel-powered step van for the price of a gas one, and I put an injection pump in it. Now there's a Cow King bed and a kitchen and all that. So that's now our camper. It'll tow the boat or the jet skis or whatever pretty effortlessly. It'll even tow the Jeep on a trailer if I need to. If we want to go camping somewhere and then leave from there and go four-wheeling, we can bring the Jeep with us. But those are some of the cars I've had over the years. If you have any questions, put them in the comments section. I'll read them and answer them. Kind of into cars and engine swaps and stuff. I actually have a big block Chevy motor with Corvette heads on it that I'm looking for something to stick in. I thought I could get this square body truck to put it in, but the guy wanted to keep it. I thought he was going to get rid of it, so I don't know what we'll do about that. I have a small block Chevy engine laying around too with Vortec heads that makes about 330 horsepower. So I just apparently have engines with no cars now, but these are some of the things I've been into over the years, and they've been a lot of fun. Keeps me out of trouble. I never really had time or money for drugs or women because I spent it all on cars, which was a good time. So